Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Node-RED development live stream, or welcome to the replay if you're watching on YouTube. If you are on the live stream, do say hi in the chat. Great to know you guys are there. Jim Bob Squelchy, great to see you again this week. If you're watching on YouTube, drop in a comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm here every Monday, 8 PM in the UK, whatever time that is, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, it's going to be an hour or so. Tonight is going to be, not going to overrun tonight. An hour or so of doing something around Node-RED core development or bits around the edges of Node-RED. Michelle, good to see you there. Welcome back this week. So what are we up to this week? So if you were watching last week, I don't know why, I always wear my headphones, but you can't talk to me, so more than anything, it's just to block out the background noise. Not there is any background noise, the kids are in bed. Anyway, last week, I'd spent most of the hour talking through this new feature we're working on for 1.3 to allow the function node to more easily install extra modules into the function node and to be able to require them in the function node. And I spent most of that stream talking through the design as it was and some of the design challenges we faced. Now, we had an initial pull request that did sort of a first pass, incomplete first pass of it. And I've sort of taken on continuing the work on it to get 1.3 out the door as soon as we can. And yeah, so last week was actually a really good week talking through some of the design challenges around this feature that been butting up against, and it was really good because in talking through the problems actually managed to talk myself into taking an approach that I hadn't wanted us to take originally, but net result being it's actually solved a lot of the initial issues with this feature. Hasn't solved all of them, but it actually let me make a lot of progress. So definitely got to the point where there is now a new pull request. If anyone wants to play with this code, if you're at that point to play with stuff, there is here we are. There is a new pull request which builds on top of the original pull request, but it actually makes quite a lot of changes to the design and how it works. And in fact, it takes out a bunch of functionality because I came to the conclusion that there's no need to rush all of these features into the one release. That actually we can get a core set of the functionality into the 1.3 release, and then based on user feedback decide if some of this other functionality is strictly needed. So wanted to quickly just show you what it looks like, because one of the big things I did was the UI rework. If I just go back to the original pull request, has it got it in here? Here we are. This was the UI in the original pull request, so for the function node, you should recognize the function node as we've got it today with this new config tab, which would give you this table of modules where you can this first field is you give it a variable name. How are you going to reference it in the function code? Then it's the name of the module itself. So you can add new modules in. And then it's all these buttons to install the module, uninstall it, check for updates, remove it, all that sort of stuff. And it was a very sort of brutalist functional UI in that it did what it needed to do, but it wasn't very nice to use. I think it didn't feel intuitive. And also, in order to support these install and update or uninstall actions, there was a whole bunch of new runtime APIs added. And that's one of the areas I didn't feel entirely comfortable, as exposing APIs on the admin API to install modules. So in some of the rework, I've actually taken out all of these buttons, and I'll talk through a bit about how this now works without those buttons. But essentially, when a flow is deployed with a function node with a module dependency, the runtime looks to see whether that module has been installed in a special directory just used for this purpose. And if it is installed, then great, the flows start. If it's not installed, the runtime will dynamically install that module, and the flows won't restart until that module has been installed, all the dependencies have been installed. And then your flows resume. If there's any problems, well, in fact, I can show you the behavior. So that's what the UI looked like. So what I did last week was spent a bunch of time in the UI to try and improve matters. So this is what the function node looks like now. Now, a few tweaks. If we just go back to what it used to look like, it had the name field up top, and then in the function tab, which is the default tab because that's the function code, we also had an input at the bottom for how many outputs the node has. And one of the issues, so as I was mucking around with the function node UI, I also had a look at, well, one of the problems with the function node is a lot of screen space is taken up by the name field and the outputs in the output field and the tab bar, and actually the space to write code was getting smaller and smaller. And yes, we added the button to expand it to a bigger editor, but still, that's kind of a workaround to the simple fact that the edit dialog was getting smaller and smaller. So what I've done is the tab bar is still there. I've retweaked the names to try and make it a bit more obvious what they refer to in terms of, these are the functions that when these functions get called. So on start, on message, and on stop. You'll note that the name field and the output field has disappeared, and that's because there is this new tab at the start, which is sort of the config tab, which has the name field, the number of outputs, and also it gives us a space in the future if there are other configuration options that are distinct from where you write code. It gives us a nice space to add those without trampling on the space given over to writing code. And we have this modules list. So this function node hasn't got any at the moment. So let's do something about that. So we click add, and this is what the UI now looks like. So rather than just having all those boxes, it actually adds a line that looks like a line of code. And so in here I could say, for some reason I've been doing a lot of playing around with the calsay2 module. So I type in the name of the module I want there, and when that blurs, it automatically fills in the variable name because, let's see, zoom in a bit. Because we don't want to force someone to write that if they, may as well auto-complete it to something sensible. And it does the right thing. So if I did like fs extra with a hyphen, it does do the right thing and converts it to a valid variable name. If you have like a scoped package, like @node_red, then it converts that properly. So that's all good. calsay2. Let me just zoom back out because I can't see anything. So we're declaring this function is going to use the calsay2 module. Let me just have sorry, let me just check. I just making sure I was running the right code to demo this, but of course I am, because if I wasn't running the right code, then we wouldn't have this UI. Anyway, so the other reason for making it look like a line of code is I want to get across the fact that you are adding an implicit line of code to your functions that's defining a variable, which means in here I can say message.payload equals, I can just use calsay, what was the variable? calsay2 dot say message.payload. Okay, so we're just going to use it. We can just use it because it's already defined. Now what I'm going to do is, if I pull up, so here's my log, if I hit deploy, you can see it's stopped and started my flow straight away without having done anything, because I've already got the calsay module installed. And just to show you what that does, if you're intrigued, well, let's say hello world from our inject node. Now when I deploy, well, that looks a bit garbled, but if I click it, we then have an ASCII cow saying hello world. So calsay2 is a brilliant module for, well, when you need an ASCII art picture of a cow saying something. Yeah, so that worked, but that was the good case because calsay2 was already installed. Now, if I copy that function node, in fact, no, don't copy that. If I add in a brand new function node, it's interesting. Anyway, yeah, a brand new function node without any modules. If I hit add in this one, you'll notice this is a typed input, because if I click down, you'll see calsay2 is already listed. So one of the considerations was, if you want to be able to use the same module in lots of function nodes, whilst we don't want to add things globally, we just want to, you want to be explicit what module is exposed to an individual function node. But if you do want to use the same function in lots of places, we want to make it nice and easy for the user to add it without having to type it in every time. So yeah, they can just pick calsay2 or other and put in the name of whatever module they want to require, and that will all just work. Now on the command line, let's have a look to see what's this actually doing. So in my .node-red directory, there is now a directory called externalModules, and that externalModules has a package.json file which we generate. As soon as we discover we need to dynamically install something, we create this directory, we put in a Node-RED externalModules, and yeah, you can see calsay2, I've fsextra and Node-RED node random are all in there, just from previous testing I've done. So if, for example, I did npm remove calsay2, then yeah, this should do it. So I've removed the module. Now when I hit deploy, you can see here it checked external modules, found calsay2 wasn't installed, and it's installed it and logged that it's successfully installed, and it's and everything's happy. So what happens if I go and hit and say I want a function, I want to use I keep hitting semicolon. There we go. I want to require a module that quite blatantly isn't going to exist. So let's see what happens when I hit deploy. So there you can see it's going to try and install it, and then thankfully I've managed to pick a random series of letters that doesn't exist. So it's logged that error, and failed to load external modules required by this flow. And crucially, note it's not logged how it started the flows. So if we go back into Node-RED, we've now got this warning, flows stopped due to missing modules. And it gives that might need improving, but it basically will list all the modules that have failed to install and any reasons, error codes that go alongside them. And notice how the function node now has a little red triangle. So we can go in here and see there's a warning next to that module to say we've failed to install that module. So there is something else. There might be more we can do to add a link here to say, show me all the function nodes with the missing modules. But that might be an improvement for later. But for now, we do at least join up the error so that you can see. So I can just remove that module, hit deploy, and it's successful, and my flows have started again. So in many ways, it's the same as if you deploy a node of a type you don't have installed. Your flows stop and you get the same error, but it's about missing node types rather than missing modules. So yeah, so overall I think the user experience it's going okay. The bit I'm aware we don't have is, because I've removed all those buttons to install, update, uninstall, we've no longer got a way purely from the editor for a user to come into their external modules directory and to remove anything, other than manually on the command line to come in here and to manually remove stuff. Like, I know node random was in that list, I'm just going to remove it. It's going to just cause confusion. Yeah, so that's something we might need to think about in the future, is provide some UI way. The problem with that is when I'm looking at this one node, I don't know. Yeah, I might have 100 other function nodes. So there needs to be some sort of consolidated view that tells me these are the modules you are using and how many nodes are using them. And here are the unused modules you have installed, but nothing's using them. There's a bunch of information there that the runtime doesn't currently expose to the editor. Like, here's the stuff you've got installed that isn't being used. So just need to think through a bit more the how that's going to work. But yeah. And I should say, this does also work with all the Node.js built-in modules. So the code, so I can say, what was it, like path.resolve dot. So I've hit deploy, and you'll see in my log, there's no attempt to install anything. The code recognizes if it's a built-in module for npm or not, and the fact it's a built-in, it doesn't have to install anything, and that's goodness. So now when I inject, you can see it's done a path.resolve of the current working directory, and there it is. So that's all goodness. Now from a security point of view, there's some new settings. Which zoomed in so much I can't see it. Where is it? Yeah, so we've got these new settings under external modules. Has two sections: palette for controlling nodes that can be installed, and this is the new one, modules. So in here we've got a new setting that will turn off the ability to install modules at all. It will load them if they've been installed on the command line, but it won't dynamically install stuff. And then you can also do an allow list and a deny list. So here you can see, in fact, so you can see I've got foo star and fs on the deny list. So if I, rather than, well, as well as path, if we tried, now just by typing fs in there, because the allow and deny lists are passed to the editor, we already get an error saying that module's not allowed. But let's say I ignore that error. You see it's still flagged an error. I hit deploy. It warns me that it's not properly configured because there's an error, but we're going to forge on ahead. And we get the warning that flows are stopped due to missing modules. FS, module not allowed. So, again, it means in your settings you are able to put, if you're running Node-RED in a constrained environment, controlled environment, on behalf of others, what have you, you can put some controls into what modules can be installed, or you can, yeah. So that's all. That is all good. Let's remove that. Yeah, Noxy Void. So there's a similar view for nodes in the sidebar. Yeah, so there's the manage palette view, which tells you all about the nodes. Yes, so when I talk of a consolidated view, then it would probably be a tab here. Now, but this is an interesting design question. So the function node is a node like any other in the palette. By which I mean, what do I mean? So when we think about building this ability for nodes to have extra modules that are installed dynamically, we've tried to build it in a way that other nodes could take advantage of that, like UI Builder. I think I touched on this a bit last week. Yeah, so that's why the function node by itself here will only know about the function node. It won't know about any other node that has registered itself as being something that uses third-party modules dynamically. So that's why the consolidated view can't live here. That's why some sort of consolidated view would live in settings, because it's a more a view of the runtime state of external modules. But the problem then does come back to what are the APIs we have to expose. I mean, the original design note does list out all these APIs. I've sort of stripped back how much of that we implement up front. Partly because, again, it always makes me slightly... One of the reasons this feature always makes me nervous is this idea of we're exposing another way that someone could install arbitrary code into Node-RED, and if you haven't got security set up, then that's a big security problem, which I guess we already have, that someone could publish a malicious node to npm, and even today it could get installed. So yeah. I think at some point there would be this consolidated view of modules in the user settings, but I'm kind of feeling the need to take this one step at a time. Also, I really want to get 1.3 out the door, and it's just trying to define what's the minimum set of functionality that's suitable for this feature, knowing we don't have to get every aspect of it completely locked down. As long as the core is there, as long as what we do provide makes sense, then then I think that's the way to go. Anyway, that's the preamble. What I wanted to do tonight is, what I've been doing today is writing a bunch of unit tests for this new code, and the one piece that's left in terms of unit tests are unit tests for the function node itself. Now, I've not done a lot of work inside the function node code in my version of this pull request. So this is still largely the code that was in the original pull request. Now, if we just step through a bit. So this is in part, I'm rediscovering it for myself a little. Let's see. There is, what are we looking for? We are looking for libs. Here we go. So as the node's starting up, if the node has this libs property, so this is the property the function node has that, here, let me show you. If I export this function node, then here you can see it has this libs property, which is an array, and each element of the array is an object with the name of the module that it depends on and the variable name to expose it as. So here we look for libs, and then we iterate over them. We get the variable name, and as long as it's not blank, then we so sandbox is sort of the environment the function node runs in. We then try and require the module, but we use Node-RED's own require function that we provide. Because of the way Node-RED works, basically code is loaded from all over the place, and you can't guarantee where this code is running can see the module we're trying to require. And in fact, that certainly won't be the case now we install them in this external modules directory. So this is a library function we already provide for some other reasons that will know how to require that external module. And it has all the same checks. So by that I mean the allow and deny list also it doesn't only get applied at the point when we try to install the modules, it also gets applied at the point where someone tries to require it using this library. So yeah, all the same sort of controls are in place there. Yeah, so it just tries to require it, and then it adds it to the sandbox, so it's available to be run. And I think that sandbox, I'm pretty sure, gets reused. Let me just double check this before I say it too confidently. Create script. Yep. Yeah, so that sandbox gets shared between the on start, on message, and on stop, which is good. That's what you want. So that's all fairly straightforward. But what we haven't got right now is any unit test code that will work for which will do anything for this. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time seeing, can we put together a unit test for this? The reason I say we'll see if we can is, so if you've been watching for a few weeks, I think I did an hour on the Node-RED test helper, the module, the utility we provide that to help test nodes. I did have to publish a new version of the test helper earlier this week to fix something, to make it work with this new feature in a completely backwards compatible way. But people will find if they are testing nodes against Node-RED 1.3, they need to make sure they've got the latest version of the Node-RED node test helper. What I don't currently know is whether this red.require call will work properly with the Node-RED test helper. It might be that's something we have to stub out. That one. It might be that's something we have to stub out in the test, but we will see. So, function node tests, why do they all appear commented out? Well, that's my first question. Why are all the function node tests commented out? Curious. I suspect, let's go have a look. Let's have a look. I may have overlooked this. So this is the draft, and it's clearly it is a draft. This isn't intended for merging as is, but I do wonder. No. Okay. This is curious. Why are our function node tests all commented out? What's going on? All right, let's go look to see, is this true in, right, let's work methodically. Let's go look at the master branch, and let's go look at 10 function spec. They're commented out in master. This is not good. Okay. So now this is where we're going to look at when did they get commented out, and was it me, and did I completely forget to bring them back in? It was me, you know, 13 days ago. What was I doing? Well, that was a mistake. Oh well, at least it was only 13 days ago. Oops, indeed. So, let's think through how we're going to. No, I will tidy that up. I'll fix that in master directly, but the merge conflicts won't be too bad to deal with. So, right, that's comment them back in. And then let's just run it just to see where we are at. So test nodes, core function 10 function spec. Right. Yeah, test the tests. Yeah. There we are. So good. The tests still pass. We're still okay. So there's 1,500 lines of tests in here. So where should we stick it? Let's just collapse the code down so we can just see the layout a bit better. Let's stick it here. Describe external modules. Right, let's see. Let's just get a it should require, and we're going to use what module should we use? I'm going to use a built-in one just to keep life simple for now. FS and path are bad ideas because the only sort of simple checks I can make is going to be path or location specific, and I don't want to muck around with. There's no point mucking around with that sort of stuff. Oh yeah, no. I think we already. This is where I get caught out because, oh no, we don't expose. Okay, let's use the OS module. If we do it with the OS module, although again, I want something there that, oh no. Here we go. Let's see how we get on. Let's just copy. We're going to copy a different test. We're going to copy a. This is pretty much a very vanilla test that just tests the very much the basic functionality of the function node. And we are going to try doing a node dots. Well, we're going to do our function code is going to be message.payload equals os dot, what should we do? Os dot, what does it matter? Os dot version return message. Okay, and then we want to add in the libs property, which is an array of objects which have the var set to the name of the variable it's exposed as, and the module like that. Okay, so we're going to test that flow. We inject a message, then yeah, these are very old tests and their error handling isn't as proficient as it could be. So we expect this test to fail on this line that we're testing, that it has a payload of property foo, whereas in reality it's going to be whatever os.version returns. But let's have a look. If I run that test, so it timed out. Why did that time out? So this is where I think Node-RED Node Test Helper is going to need some updates in order to handle that red.require call. Let's have a look. Now, yeah, see, I wonder. In fact, we need to NLS that error message. Sorry, just spotted that. We need to translate it, put it into the message catalog. So the test is hanging, which means on input's never getting called, which means it's falling apart somewhere in the internals. Now I suspect I've got console.log turned off in here, haven't I? I think. Is that right? No. Let's just check that. Okay. Right, let's just sanity check. It's not falling apart in here anywhere, is it? Out of interest, if I were to just set that to the empty array and rerun the tests, I don't think it'll time out, but I'd expect us to get an error. Oh, it still times out, okay. What's going, well, where is it timing out? So at this point, I'm going to go pull up Node-RED Node Test Helper. And this is good. If this is now, a scenario we've never had to test with Test Helper before, and we're finding a deficiency with Test Helper, then all the better. Helper.load. Helper.load. Here, this is where it's failing, I think. Is that right? I wonder what is happening. If I put a catch here, it's basically it's crapping out somewhere. So no. I don't really want to have to break out the debugger. I don't do debuggers. No. So where it's getting hung up somewhere. Oops. So. Noxy Boy, anyone know why I can't access modules from functional global context in my settings.js? They aren't appearing in my global context. Any pointers? First things first is make sure you've edited the right settings.js. That is an all too common issue. So make sure you are editing the one that Node-RED mentions in its log at startup. And then, yeah, just double, triple check you've got the syntax right is the usual answer. Sometimes you do stumble on odd modules that just don't let themselves get required in the way we try and handle them, which don't. Yeah, sorry, I'm just focusing on this. You know what? I've got a sneaky suspicion. If let's have a look. If I go into Node modules, I think I've figured out why none of my debugs are showing up. None of my debugs showing up because I'm not editing the code it's using, which is the classic test helper. Oh, right. I do despise npm sometimes. So let's just go fix up these permission problems. And by fix up the permissions problems, delete everything. Oh, why does this? Why? Read write, yeah, everyone's got read write access. What do you mean you haven't got permissions? Oh, I despise this stuff sometimes. Well, no, of course it doesn't bloody exist. So at this point I always think, oh, what have they done to change things? What have they broken? What have I broken? So I run npm install and directory installs fine. And then try and do an npm install of Node-RED test helper here, which should actually just symlink it. All those files exist. And now it won't do a rename. It infuriates the life out of me, npm. It works in one release and it fails in the next. Right. What have we got? Do we have it installed? Yeah, I've got it installed. But why is it installed? It shouldn't be. No. When in doubt, manually create a symlink. I think that's... I mean, npm's going to shout at me as soon as I try and do anything with npm, but for now... Okay, so it's still failing. But let's see, can we see where it's actually getting to? And if this doesn't run the, oh yeah, okay, you can see. Okay, so it's getting started too, which is goodness. Oh, okay, so it's getting to the point where it is actually sending the message and the node is logging an error. The node is failing to send it, but what I'm at a slight loss for is why are we not seeing the error anywhere? How do we do something about this? We can we do a get it off this thread, as it were. We're going to do helper.log. I mean, this is useful because I haven't had to do this for so long. It's useful just to see for someone else writing these sorts of tests. You'd reasonably expect this stuff to work, and if there to be errors, for them to spit out and actually help you figure it out. But why not? What is going wrong? Why? It's failing somewhere. The message isn't getting through the function node. What we don't know is it even getting into the function node? So let's have a look at that. Node on input, message arrive. We're going to see a whole load of those. And okay, so the message is arriving, which is good. Let's go and have, I think it's process message. It's here. So something's blowing up in here. Oh, sod it. Let's just do a console.log error message. At some point I need to work out. There we go. os.version is not a function. Okay, let's have a look. What? We're going to be calling red.require. Let's log what we're actually getting. So we've asked to load module.module. And what we've got is lib. Let's see. Okay. Good. Have I just os.version? See? Oh man, added in version 13 and version 12, and I'm running in Node 10. Oh, what right. That was a wild goose chase. The code was working, I randomly picked entirely the wrong function to test it, to validate it was working. Oh, how tiresome was that. Right, let's remove that. And all that faffing with test helper. Right. So now, if we roll back the clock 20 minutes ago, we expect the test to fail because we didn't know exactly what to test for. But so at least it's now failing because of what we're looking for isn't right. We'll just do that. We'll just do an explicit. I mean, it's a bit of a false. Well, let's verify that message.payload is that value. Good. Okay, so that shows by having libs there. Okay. We almost need to test the reverse. Should fail if using OS module without it listed in libs. So there's always the risk at some point in the future we add, for example, were we to add OS by default, then this test would start passing. Or it would no longer be really testing what we wanted to test. So we now expect this test to fail because we're referencing OS but we're not using it. So we should never get a message passed through. So if a message arrives there, we can fail it straight away. Oh, and this is, okay, I'm just doing this for the sake of demonstrating. This is, I will fix the test to be nice in a minute. But let's just see what that does. Yeah. So that passed, and it passed. So what's this test doing? It sends the message. It will get past the function node. The function node will evaluate this code. It will fail because OS is not defined. So we should never receive a message at N2. Now this is a horrible test because if there was a bug, we could end up calling done twice, which is you don't do that. So instead, rather than fail the test if we receive the message, we just set a flag saying we have received it, and then we can say message received should be false. And we put that in a try catch because if that fails, we want to fail the whole test. But if it passes, then we succeed the test, and we don't need 100 milliseconds, don't we? We just need to get it off the current iteration of the node loop to allow just all the internal asynchronous stuff to happen. Cool. Okay, well that's passing. It's a bit rudimentary. And obviously it's only testing a built-in. A lot of the other error cases are handled by the runtime. So if I were to require something here that didn't exist, or yeah, I mean that's an interesting question. What happens in the test helper if I were to say, okay, let's just see what happens if down here I did var. Let's do cow say again because I like Cowsay. If I now run that test, what does it do? What does test helper do? See, I bet it's tried to install, I bet it's installed that module somewhere. See, it almost timed out, in fact. If that took more than 2 seconds, it would have timed out. And I think that was because it's done the npm install. I don't want to build in tests, our unit tests, to depend on npm being up and responsive to run the test. So I think I have got I've written all the tests for the external module code. So I wrote all of these this afternoon, and in here we stub out the call to do the install when we're just testing this one module. So we do test all the different error, well, the main error scenarios, like it's a invalid module name, it's an invalid version of the module, it's on the allow and deny list, installs disabled. So all of this is the right place for all of that logic. The function node can't bypass it. So the main thing to do is just to make sure, as long as libs, as long as the module is correctly listed in the libs property, then the function node does the right thing and it works. So I think that will, with 2 minutes to 9 o'clock, I think that will do. So I'm just going to yeah, going to add those two. Oh, that's interesting. Haha. So in the current working directory, I now have an external modules directory with a package.json. And if I have a look at the package.json, it has Cowsay2 listed. And if I look at the creation times, yeah, 8:56, a couple of minutes ago when I ran that test. So by running that test, it certainly did do the npm install, and it did it under external modules in my current working directory, which is hey, it showed something working, but probably not what we want the tests to be doing. Okay, let's get this unit test added. Just make sure. Okay, so I need to do the NLS yet on that, but that's fine. In fact, I'm not going to commit that. I've got it. Fix that up tomorrow. So we've got these couple of tests, fairly rudimentary tests for the function node, but at least make sure that function is covered. So function node test libs test modules identified in libs are added to sandbox. Good. So push that up. Yeah, I'm going to leave that there. There's still work to do. Bit of tidying up on the error logging. Bit of tidying up on, in fact, what I'm going to do right this second, just run npm install, because I think that should because I mucked around with my Node-RED node, the test helper module. I just want to make sure. Yeah, okay. So I've restored that back to the npm published version, which is goodness. At some point, I'll figure out how to get that back to being a symlink, because yeah, it's far more useful when it's a symlink, because then I can develop it in parallel. Anyway, that's that. Cool. So this feature it's getting there. Definitely getting there. It's close. At least for this iteration of it, which is going to be good enough for the 1.3 beta. There's a few things still to sort out for 1.3, a few fixes percolating through, which have cropped up recently. And the other big one, which has sort of sat there, been waiting for me to look at for ages, is Mqtt V5 support. So Steve did the work on that ages ago, and it's been sat waiting to be reviewed And yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, I know some of you in the community have already started playing with it and got good feedback. So I think, but from the few screenshots I've seen, it adds a lot of new UI to the Mqtt nodes. So need to do a bit of a double checking of the UI, which is funny. I spent, I don't know what, 2 years? Was it 2 years, 18 months in standards committees, going all through Mqtt V5, designing it, coming up with all the new features. And the funny thing is, having spent all that time discussing all sorts of things and all different ways of implementing it and all that sort of stuff, people sometimes ask me V5 questions, and my honest answer is, I can't remember what we agreed, because we discussed so many different approaches, and I can't remember exactly what got in at the end and what didn't get in, and did we take that approach or this other approach. And so, and because I don't use V5 for anything personally, although my name is on the spec, I'm quite rusty. So part of this is also a good excuse just to remind myself of all the cool stuff that we added to V5. And then, like I say, find the right way to expose it in the node, which won't be overwhelming to new users. But yeah, no, 1.3 is shaping up to be quite a cool release. It is behind schedule, but all things being equal, all things being equal, it will be good. And then we can start thinking about 2.0 in the April timeframe. So yeah, that's it for me this week. If any of you want to have a chance to have a one-on-one chat with me about anything, I do run Node-RED office hours. I'm not doing them this week because it is school half term, which means the kids are on holiday this week. Thanks to lockdown, it basically the only difference to the last 6 weeks is now I don't do maths lessons with my daughter every day. But now we have to find new ways to keep them entertained during the day. But that's all good. It was all fun. But yeah, no office hours this week. But there are plenty of slots available for next Friday if you're interested in getting 25 minutes with me to chat about anything related to Node-RED. And yeah, it is just gone 9. My next job is to go do our weekly food shop at the supermarket. So it's going to be a bit of a late night for me tonight. I'll sign off. Thanks for everyone for joining. See you next week. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, if you've watched this far. If not, well, I've run out of things to say. I'm going to say goodnight to you all. Have a great week. Until next time, goodbye.